Listen up, fellow Democrats. Fight fake news and lies with facts. Save our democracy from right-wing hypocrisy. Keep our integrity, embrace our diversity. Whenever we're down, we always come back. So listen up, Democrats.
Hello, welcome to Progressive Oregon, a weekly engagement broadcast on progressive issues in Oregon. My name is Larry Taylor, and I am here today with my co-host, Betsy Cunningham. If you would like to ask questions during the show, go to the Uphill Media channel in YouTube and type in your questions, and Betsy will convey them to us. And we will do our best to answer them. In today's program, we will first talk about campaign finance, Jordan Cove, and the Democratic Party of Oregon, and give everyone a status update of exactly how sordid money is becoming in politics in Oregon. Our next guest is Katie Iman, who's a candidate in Coos County for the Board of Commissioners. And then we have Richard Chasm, who's the president of the Looking Glass Olalla Water Control District, and we'll be talking about the pipeline going through Douglas County. And then finally, we'll talk about the Progressive Nomination Convention coming up and the county reorganizations and upcoming events. So our first topic is Jordan Cove and foreign corporate contributions. And what we're going to start out with is a Bloomberg news release from about a year and a half ago after the Trump administration took office, and just remind us all about the enthusiasm of them after Trump got elected. Are we ready for the video, John?
Yes, we are. Here we go.
CEO Don Althoff, you just left the White House from a meeting with Gary Cohn. What did you guys talk about?
Well, we talked about a great project that we're working on called Jordan Cove. It's really meets all the targets for what President Trump wants to do about putting money to work, get it off the sidelines and into work. So we were talking about what it would take to get the project built and get it going.
Mr. Althoff, in the last administration, this Jordan Cove project was caught in a regulatory quagmire. This, of course, has direct implications for the Pacific Connector gas pipeline. Did you get assurances from Mr. Cohn, from this White House, that they are going to be able to move this project forward?
Well, I think what we got was the commitment to work with us to make sure that there was oversight for the federal groups that are going to be on the permitting process, and that'll be very important and very helpful.
How many jobs are we talking about here?
4,000 construction jobs for the first 5 years. And then,
where?
In Coos Bay, Oregon. And then 240 permanent jobs ongoing. And these are going to be high-paying jobs. They're going to be $75,000 to $85,000 per job. And right now in Coos Bay, the average salary is about $32,000. So these are going to be a big boost to the port and the city of Coos Bay.
So, as we know, infrastructure has been a huge priority for this administration. They want to talk about a $1 trillion infrastructure package. This energy sector, part of that. But, Mr. Althoff, is there a timeline here that you got from this administration for when they want to see an infrastructure package move through Congress?
We didn't get anything about that. We're going to fund this package. This is an $8 to $10 billion project that's going to be privately funded. The White House is going to work on us with helping us get through the permitting process as quickly and as efficiently, and the message to us was, hurry up, get going.
So what is the timeline then to move the Jordan Cove project along?
Well, we hope to be able to get through to FID by mid-2019, but if we can move the permitting up and speed the permitting up, I think we can get it up into potentially the beginning of 2019 or maybe 2018.
And I know you're busy, so just final question here in the minute or so we have left. What do you make of this administration from a regulatory standpoint, compare it with the last administration, and what it means for your company's bottom line?
It's hugely helpful. It's a big difference. It makes a big difference for the projects, and it just adds efficiency and certainty to the process, which is a big help when you want to move a big project like this forward.
So the bottom line is you're confident Jordan Cove is...
And there we go.
Yes, indeed. There were so many lies in there. But you can tell how excited they were about this project and its ability to to start moving forward. So today, our first segment is going to be about the Jordan Cove project and the position of the Democratic Party of Oregon on it, and the candidates that have been receiving money from Jordan Cove. And first of all, we need to point out that Jordan Cove is actually a Canadian company, and so Trump is all excited about making a Canadian company great again. So, John, why don't you take it from here and talk about campaign finance and the Democratic Party of Oregon and where it sits in relationship to Jordan Cove.
All right. Well, I did this yesterday on the Saturday morning show for practice, so we could get through this fast. Hi, everybody. We're just going to cover some facts here. But we have Katie Iman with us here, and she's actually referenced in the Jordan Cove article that I'm going to be talking about. Give me 1 second here. We've been having some issues with audio and slide. I just want to make sure we don't have them now. Okay, we're good. All right. Hang on, Larry. I got to put myself in the frame here. All right. There. Now, Jordan Cove and Finance Corporation contributions. We're going to go through this really fast. First of all, just know that any Democrat taking Jordan Cove fossil money is working against the platform, and a 10-year-old resolution, and another resolution we passed this year, and a bunch of LAIs. And it's, you know, the DNC at the top said, we're not going to do that, and then they changed their mind. We don't want them taking LNG money, but we have Democrats taking LNG money, and they're taking it from a Canadian company. So let's take a look at that. Here's one of the LAIs. Prohibit the development of Oregon waterways and coastal regions for offshore drilling and transportation and export of fossil fuels. That includes LNG. That's a directive to Democrats, right? Jordan Cove LNG has given a small amount of money to Greg Walden, $5,400, according to this report on open secrets as a PAC. However, if you look at this report in Orstar, you can see that they've given a lot more money to a lot of other people. And not just under Jordan Cove LNG, but some of the highlights, $40,000 just in this snapshot to John Sweet, $15,000 to Caddy McEwen, Democrat, $2,000 to Betsy Johnson, Democrat, $5,000 to Peter Courtney. Actually, I want to make sure that I don't get yelled at for not being accurate. These are to campaign committees, right? The Friends of Peter Courtney, or Peter Courtney for State Senate. So they spend this money on advertising for the candidates. The candidates get to say, well, I don't directly take that cash, but my campaign committee takes it, right? $2,000 to Brad Witt, $500 to Dallas Hurd. I don't even know he was only worth $500. But Save Coos Jobs Committee, which is saving those 240 jobs, everybody. All right, the 240 permanent jobs that are, going to be these awesome jobs. Here's just some of the money they've received from Jordan Cove LNG and Jordan Cove Energy Project LP. $236,000, $216,000, $115,000. All right. Remember, Canadian. And our Elections Commission doesn't seem to care. This is an article in Oregonian Live. And they asked Steve Trout, who is the elections director for Oregon, about this. And throughout this entire article, what you see is that he recognizes that Jordan Cove is donating or putting a lot of money into campaigns, into candidates, and includes Dem candidates that are violating the platform. And he doesn't care. He basically said, yeah, it violates federal law, and that violates state law, but we don't want to be, and this is a quote, the gotcha agency. I'm not really sure what that means. He's like, don't you just want to do your job? Somebody's taking money illegally. This company is dumping a ton of money illegally into Oregon, and they're doing it against the predominant party's statement on it. We don't want this happening. And you don't want to investigate? So there's a lot more I could go into here, but we're not going to do it this time because I really want to hear what Katie has to say about this, because she's running against, I believe, John Sweet, right? And you're right? Yeah. So John's loaded with LNG cash. And he's the commissioner, and he's using that cash to keep himself in power. He doesn't really care about what's going on in Coos Bay. Those 240 jobs, I know, they're important, right? I want to show you something else, just real quick. I think this is very important. We're going to watch the money go round. Jordan Cove LNG donates money to Protect Our Senators Fund. What the hell is that? I don't know. But one of their beneficiaries is holding on to Oregon's priorities. What the hell is that? I don't know. But holding on to Oregon's priorities donates its money to nobody in Oregon. All of this money goes to Dianne Feinstein, Doug Jones, Joe Manchin, Claire McCaskill, Elizabeth Warren. What kind of priorities are they holding on to? I find that very odd. And look at who the major investors are in holding on to Oregon's priorities. DaVita, Amgen, FedEx, General Motors, Google, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Merck, Pfizer. What priorities do they have for Oregon? What priorities do any of the senators that aren't even in Oregon have for Oregon? I don't know. So Jordan Cove really gets to spend its money wherever it wants, on whoever it wants, to get what it wants done. And that's how the money goes round. Back to you, Larry. Oh, wait, one last thing. Here's how we're going to fight that. Everybody needs to do this. Elections.sos@oregon.gov. Ask Steve Trout why he doesn't want to do his job. Ask him why he won't investigate this. Because we got people violating the law. Back to you, Larry.
Yeah, I would just like to point out how serious organizations take this law. So when you do something like attend a political dinner or buy swag like a T-shirt, the organizations freak out if the money comes from a foreigner, like a Canadian or a German who might want to buy an Obama T-shirt or perhaps attend a Obama dinner or some event that is being hosted by the Democrats. Organizations freak out because this is considered foreign money, and even though it's only a $15 T-shirt or a $75 dinner ticket, they refuse to take that money because it is considered foreign money and it is illegal. And so what John just went over was instances where they're really shuffling around almost $1 million through shell companies and that end up in candidates' war chests.
There you go. And there's here. Where is it? It really is $1 million. I was going to find the one that says $1 million. They really did spend $1 million last year. There's an article. That's last year. This year, it's I don't know where we're at. It's a lot more.
So our first guest today is Katie Iman. She's running for candidate for the Coos County Board of Commissioners. And of course, my first question is, why aren't you not running for governor? But we can go into that later. Welcome, Katie.
Welcome. I'm glad to be here.
So what are your thoughts on campaign finance and what people should do and how sordid it is?
Well, I think it's obviously telling that my opponent, who will be making regulatory decisions about Jordan Cove, has so freely accepted $40,000 in this campaign, making this one of the most expensive campaigns for county commissioner in history. And I'm just really basically appalled and that he would accept that much money directly. And it's really a gift to me that they haven't laundered it through other organizations, but they gave it directly to him. So I just think it's a stain on our democracy when a person when an elected official accepts money from an organization that they will have regulatory authority over. It's a gift that's coming directly from Jordan Cove. So it lets me clearly tell people about this conflict of interest. And this commissioner has actually been declared by LUBA, Land Use Board of Appeals, to have not disclosed an ex-party contact. And so he will have to do that during hearings in the future. And this shows a lot of potential bias, and he's clearly said he supports this project. And so that's my response. It's not good for democracy.
It was interesting that there were contributions, even though they were not big ones, to Betsy Johnson and Brad Witt, because they are from the northwest corner of the state, where we fought for a decade to block the Brentwood Landing LNG terminal and 4 other projects successfully. And the way we did that was by electing majority of county commissioners who then reversed the permit that was given to Brentwood Landing. And so that's what we hope that you're able to do. But it's interesting that they're giving money to Brad and Betsy. I guess because they feel they are kindred souls and would be supportive votes because of their past support of LNG in Clatsop County. And hopefully not because they think that those projects will restart at some point in the future. So yeah. How do you see this money manifesting itself in the campaigns? How does this provide a benefit to the campaigns?
Well, we're letting people know, and at the door I tell people about this, and I just get a response like, whoa. So I think it's helpful for my campaign. Of course, my opponent is named John Sweet, and frankly, he's a very sweet man. He's a nice person. And he says, oh, of course, this will not affect, he doesn't say it won't affect his decision. What he says is, I've always supported this project, so it makes sense that they would support me. And he insists that it's an Oregon corporation because the Jordan Cove Energy Project was, while formed in Delaware and is registered in Oregon. And also it's a wholly owned subsidiary of Pembina. And Pembina is a Canadian corporation. Jordan Cove Energy Project has no income other than all the money it gets from its foreign Canadian corporation.
We found them doing the same thing here that they are doing down there, which is lying about the impact. When they talk about 230 jobs paying $70,000 a year, I mean, the details are those are not local jobs because the high-paying jobs are high-skilled jobs, and they will probably be hiring those from outside of the community. And if anyone local gets employed by this, it'll be unskilled labor, which is not going to be $80,000 a year.
Exactly. And we've done research to find out how many people it takes to actually run one of these facilities 24/7. And it's about 80 to 100 people. And this company used to say, oh, it's 150 permanent jobs. And now they're saying publicly it's 250. And they said on that video you ran earlier, it's 240. So the number keeps changing. It seems like they should know in advance how many people it's going to take to run a facility like this. And I would need to say that this company has no experience doing something like this. So their estimates are purely speculative and need to be taken with a grain of salt because they want to promote this project as best they can. There also is the devastating impact it would have. It would be great short term to bring in 4,000 workers to build the pipeline and build the terminal, but that will raise rent here locally. And we already have a 1% vacancy rate, and rent is basically through the roof. It's unsustainable, and it could raise it even further, like it happens in other places, double and triple the rent. And that would make it very difficult for people living here because its rent is already too high. So I'm very concerned for the local population about that much rent pressure on the populace. And then they say they'll make a bunch of jobs, but those jobs will disappear when the customers disappear after the construction is completed. And boom bust is never a good idea, a long-term good idea for any economy.
The other way that we were able to fight it up here in the north part of the state was to convey to people the impact of explosion, either in the facility or of the pipeline, which has happened in various places across the country. And we the most shocking thing was that they came in and sweet talked the local city council in Warrenton about this, but never made provisions for building up the fire district, so that there were actually fire engines to be used in case something like this happened. And this would have been a huge financial burden for the local communities that just does not have the kind of money to build the kinds of facilities you'd need to combat a fire caused by liquid natural gas.
Well, I just want to address that real quickly. This facility would be built on the North Spit, which is right across from the town of North Bend and Coos Bay. The tanker goes all along the channel, which it's estimated over almost 17,000 people are in what are called by the industry zones of concern. Facility would be it's in a severe liquefaction of the ground and also a tsunami, devastating tsunami. So you have these really cold tanks, two of them, 350 feet across and 200 feet high, and they're surrounded by concrete, and they're basically filled with this liquefied natural gas, or the tankers coming in or out, or either empty or filled. But the point is, you have a major liquefaction of this facility, of the ground below this facility. Those tanks are going to turn into beach balls. The concrete will crack. The metal is very cold at negative 260 degrees Fahrenheit, and the likelihood of an earthquake is 40% in the next 50 years, according to Oregon State University. So we're looking at a situation where these tanks, not built on bedrock, built on sand, will disconnect from their mooring, so to speak, crack open, and creates a pool fire. And methane, actually, this is pure methane, and when it burns, it doesn't burn like an oil or gas fire. It just explodes when it becomes 5 to 15% of the atmosphere, and that can extend as far as 14 miles. But according to Sandia National Laboratory, who did tests out in the Nevada desert, we're talking about, we're saying 2.3 miles. I think it's interesting to note that the Society for the International Gas Tanker and Terminal Operators, of which Jordan Cove is a member, and 93% of the LNG industry are members of this organization, they have in their recommendations for site selection, never build near a population center, never build in an area that has geologic hazards like earthquakes. And so this facility totally violates the safety standards of the industry itself. And that's not even being addressed by the county commissioners in their deliberations on the public benefit of this project. And I'm bringing that out to the public so they can see how their safety is being ignored at the supposed benefit of economic development. But the economic development really promises boom bust, which is not good for our community.
So are you able to get your message across?
Well, I'm working on it. Obviously, I could use more donations to get more effective mail out. And I did have one mail I sent by bulk mail. It turns out the post office isn't sending it as quickly as you'd like. But a beautiful piece came out yesterday from the Oregon League of Conservation, telling voters about my candidacy and how I'm not a one-issue candidate. I'm working on many issues. Another top priority is housing in this county with the 1% vacancy rate, and basically prices are too high and quality is too low. So I'm getting my message out, I think. And of course, people can go to Katie Facus for more, to give contributions to my campaign. It'd be greatly appreciated to get the message out.
So when we elected the county commissioners, we have a 5-person board, and we elected 3 to capture a majority. What is the situation with you? Will you be a lone voice opposing this, or will you have allies on the board if you were elected?
Well, the commissioners consists of 3 members, and they all have consistently voted yes for every permit. However, one of the commissioners, Bob Main, was elected with the support of the anti-LNG folks. And when he got elected, he voted against LNG permit in the first hearing they had. And then after that, he's voted for it every time. And when asked by his supporters why he did that, he said, well, why should I be the odd man out? And, and so he has a choice this time of joining with me and being in the middle. And if he wants to get reelected in 2 years, it makes sense for him to fulfill his campaign statements that he made when he got elected. And also, if I can beat my opponent, it'll be easier for someone to beat him in 2 years. And I think he wants to keep his job. So there's political pressure on him. And the other county commissioner touts the value of tourism. And I think given the national attention this is getting, tourism will suffer in Coos County, which is already a major part of our economy, $261 million last year. And so she'll have a choice to make too. And in the event, I am the lone anti-LNG voice, and we aren't able to stop it at the county level, and it gains all the federal and state permits it needs, which is speculative. Then I'm telling people, you want me on the board to make sure that Coos County gets what we're promised by this foreign corporation. They're making lots of promises, as you can imagine, and I'm going to make sure that we hold their feet to the fire and then they perform as stated.
Wow. So again, please tell us your website.
It's Katie for Coos, KatyForCoos.com.
And are you organizing phone banking and doing those kinds of activities?
Yes, I'm phone banking. If I'm not going door to door, I've hit over 2,000 doors. Two from out of the area that care about this, but this is really great to see the statewide support. But anyway, most people are local, going door to door with me. I'm going up to Lakeside today with a person I met at the door yesterday who said, "Oh, I want to help you," a young man. So there's enthusiasm for my race, and we're also phone banking, calling the rural voters we're not able to contact at the door. And then we have mailers. And so I think it's going well. And there's kind of a buzz about this race. And we've been successful with letters to the editor. And so I'm very hopeful. It feels good at the door.
So John gave us Mr. Trout's email address to pressure him to investigate these illegal contributions. Is there anything else that people can do to stop this kind of elections law violation?
Well, we filed actually I didn't, but a supporter filed a complaint with the Federal Election Commission, given Mr. Trout's response. But I think emails to Mr. Trout is an excellent idea. And also they could reference the case to the Federal Election Commission to ask them to take action, because it's such a clear violation of campaign finance laws.
Indeed. So is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
Well, I just like to say that what I offer to Coos County is a positive future. I would like to see us have consider these decisions with it keeping in mind the long-term, keeping intent in mind what's best in the long term and for the common good. And this project is not in the common good or good for the long term. So I'd like to say that with me, you're getting a person who's thoughtful, who's well informed. I've researched these issues. I'm an attorney. And so I just really offer myself. And there's better things I could be doing, like doing my garden right now. But I just love this county so much. It's so beautiful that I've decided to step up to the plate and do my part to have a bright future for Coos County so people can move here, get jobs, create jobs even, and watch their children grow up and their grandchildren grow up, because there's nothing more beautiful than watching that and living in such a beautiful, incredible natural beauty we have, and that should not be compromised by for the sake of a foreign company making a lot of money.
Well, thank you for running. The hardest thing that we have to do is find people who will step up and run for these positions. So thank you so much for doing that. And we will let you get it out on the road to work on your campaign. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a great pleasure.
Bye-bye. Next up, we have Richard Chasm, who is a local activist in Douglas County. And Douglas County is affected because the pipeline runs across Southern Oregon through Douglas County. Welcome, Richard.
Good morning.
So the resolution that John referenced from 2008 was written by Dean Beyer, who was chair of the Douglas County Democrats in 2008, and we of course supported that resolution in the Democratic Party of Oregon, and the Democratic Party of Oregon membership, not so much the leadership, but the membership has been very clear in its position against LNG terminals and the associated pipelines.
Is there a question?
And in addition, what really makes this interesting for Douglas County is that it touches on the issue of eminent domain, because that is one issue that seems to cross party lines, and everyone is against the use of eminent domain by private corporations.
This is true.
Yeah, why don't you give us an update on what's happening in Douglas County?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say, go Katie! The issue has been like a badger in our shorts for over 10 years now. And the thing about the political donations is that, you know, $5,000 or $10,000 in Portland is not chump change, but it's not a lot of money. And it has direct influence on the ability of the candidates receiving the money to get flyers out, posters out. We have Gary Leaf signs all over the place. And so these contributions are extremely significant. The thing that I would like to bring in perspective is that I think it was in 2006 or 7, we had ballot measure 39. And this was a direct result of the Supreme Court ruling about the use of eminent domain in Connecticut. And so that was a statewide ballot measure that passed 62% statewide. In Douglas County, this measure that would prohibit all levels of government except at the federal to use eminent domain for the benefit of a private corporation passed in Douglas County 78.23%.
Wow.
And that is a cross section of everybody, you know, urban, rural, hippie, conservative, whatever. Clearly, they don't want it. The other thing I think it's important is that we've been getting very expensive mailers, lots of them, because down deep, they can buy all the politicians they want to, but if the public refuses to cooperate and is against this, they're not going to be able to build it. The other thing to remember about eminent domain is that they can't go to court and say, well, we need these 11 properties. They go to court and they say, we have a right of way on this property. Now we need to get the adjacent property. And they will argue about the money, but if they get, the court approves the right of eminent domain, then we're arguing about the money. They have the right to cross your property. And then they go to the next property. And if you want to fight them, you go to court and you argue about the money. Well, this isn't enough money. And the reality is, if you own property within 2 or 3 miles of the pipeline, this pipeline directly impacts the value of your property and the ability of you to market your property at a reasonable price. It is a tremendous downward pressure on selling, on the price of your property should you choose to sell it. I'm a retired realtor, and this pipeline has had a dramatic effect on private citizens' ability to buy and sell in their property and make decisions with their property for well over a decade. The other thing to remember is that now it's it's Penumbra. Originally, when this started out, the company was Fort Chicago, and then they had Williams Pipeline was going to actually build and maintain the pipeline. Well, then Fort Chicago was bought out by it was a merger to create Vereson. Vereson has since been purchased by Penumbra. And so what's going on in Canada is that there's some big companies up there, and this is all bought and sold on the Toronto stock market. And so while we're down here in Douglas County in rural Oregon, up in Toronto, this is a stock hustle. And I have mentioned this repeatedly to some of the activists in Portland, you know, find a stockbroker and dig into what's going on in Toronto. And it's been one manipulation of stock value after another. And the executives involved in this, they're making money on the stock market. The people employed on this, I've talked to a number of them actually, they don't care if it never gets built. they've got a job, nice job with perks. And so if this takes another 10 years, what do they care? They got a
So
job.
get to milk it. Yeah.
But
The other thing,
we're like a deer hung on the fence waiting for them to make a decision.
yeah, to East Coast corporations, this is just a money-making scheme, and they don't care about the personal safety or the living environment that they're creating for the local residents or how this impacts us locally. It's all just another method for generating money for their corporations.
Well, and on their balance sheets, it's considered an asset. It's an asset. We've got this project in Oregon. We're going to build LNG and ship it to China. And the other thing I think is that if you really drill down, you'll see the money to finance this whole thing is coming from China into Canada.
Great. They already own all of the U.S. debt, which I'm waiting for them to foreclose on someday.
And when they do, it's going to sting. But anyway, getting back to the project itself, and Katie touched on it big time, but there's going to be a major earthquake off the Oregon coast that's going to have impact clear into I-5. The state of Oregon right now is developing Highway 97 on the east side of the Cascades because when the big one hits, the freeway is going to be down. They're going to use 97 on the east side of the Cascades. And so their plan is to dredge a turning basin and use the dredge spoils as the basis of their plant. And like Katie says, liquefaction, when the earthquake occurs, that all turns to liquid. I mean, look what happened in the Loma Prieta earthquake down in San Francisco. The Oakland Army Depot of Vietnam War fame is on dredge spoils, and it sank 3 stories deep. They had to use chainsaws and cut through the roof to get back into the buildings. And they're proposing to build a terminal on sand from dredge spoils. They're out of their mind. The other thing is that it's difficult to really comment specifically because all we really have to go on is that first EIS. And under the Obama administration, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission killed this project. Dead, over. There's not enough upside. No, it's not going to get built. Trump came along and bingo, we have a new company, new idea, and it's actually a much different proposal. The original proposal was for 1,450 cubic pounds per square inch inside the pipe. This proposal is over 1,600 pounds per square inch. That is exponentially much more pressure inside the pipe. And yet they want to use the lowest pipe standards and welding standards permitted under the FERC doctrines to build this pipeline through, all of Southern Oregon because there's no people here. Well, golly, what do we have here? How about forest fires? I mean, how much money have we just spent putting out forest fires? And there's been a number of these fires burn right through where the pipeline's going to go. And so they soft pedal all this stuff. And when you read the EIS, they make all these claims, but they've never actually talked to anybody that is mentioned in the EIS to make the deal. And you mentioned that I'm president of the Looking Glass Olalla Water Control District, an extremely modest government enterprise. We sell irrigation water out of the Berry Creek Dam to irrigators in the Looking Glass Olalla Valley. It empties into the South Umpqua River at Winston. We have about 85 or 90 irrigators. And it's, like I say, it's extremely modest. But in this EIS, the company states they're going to buy 2 acre-feet of water from Berry Creek Dam. Well, an acre-foot is like 480,000 gallons. So we're talking about some number crowding 900,000 gallons. And we have the water, but they've never come to us and offered anything or said, this is what we want, or this is how we're going to get it. We've heard nothing from them, and yet they say they're buying water from us. Furthermore, they're going to use that water for what's known as hydrostatic testing. And they'll use it, and they can push it with what they call a pig into various parts of the completed pipeline and put it under pressure and see if it leaks. And then they'll sweep it all back, and then it's dumped back into the original watershed.
Yum.
They don't, I mean, I wrote a letter to the DEQ saying what's in that water that's going to come back from their pipeline. Everything from snooze cans to welding rods to who knows what. And chemicals that they use inside those pipes, is that going to be settled, or are they just going to dump it raw into Olala Creek? They've never said. They've never said. The other thing that I think is really, really critical here, the bid that they make to build it is going to be based on all these wonderful claims of how we're going to do such a fabulous job, and no corners will be cut, and we'll do everything up to snuff and better than that. And oh man, you can sleep at night because we're professionals. We don't want anything to go wrong. Blah blah blah. When they build it, they will cut every corner they can because they're in this for the profit, and that's the difference between the bid price and what it costs. And that's a lot of money. And they will slit our throat for $50,000. We've done it repeatedly. It's like if there's a bridge abutment that calls for 100 pieces of rebar, but we only put 70 in there, we just saved money on the 30 rebars that we didn't put in there. It's exactly what they'll do here. They'll cut every corner they can. And when I read the EIS, this is written by guys in Calgary, Alberta, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. And they're going to build a pipeline through the Coast Range. They're out of their mind.
Great. So fortunately, we have Megan Salter, who's running for representative against Dallas Hurd. She couldn't join us today, but she gave you a statement to read. Would you like to read that for her?
First of all, she's running against Gary Leaf.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And Souza is running against Dallas Hurd. I'd be happy to read this. It's, Megan's really quite smart. She's got a lot of backbone. So does Shannon. First of all, though, neither Dallas Hurd nor Gary Leaf will meet either one of these women in any kind of public debate. They refuse, and they had scheduled conflicts with the League of Women Voter in every county where Dallas Hurd could appear. Nope, I can't make it, because he knows if he meets Shannon Souza on stage in front of the public, she will eat him alive. And Dallas Hurd got a little money. Gary Leaf got $5,000 for a seat in the House of Representatives. So this is what Megan Salter asked us to read. It's time to get big money and special interest groups out of our elections. My opponent, Gary Leaf, has received $5,000 from Jordan Cove LNG, a Canadian company that is trying to build a 3-foot natural gas pipeline right through our area. Private property accounts for about 40% of the pipeline's proposed path, and imposing eminent domain is not the right answer. The voters have already voiced their opinion on this, overwhelmingly voting not to allow eminent domain for the benefit of private industry. I am against the pipeline. A future earthquake would pose a great threat if the pipeline is in place, decimating much of southern Oregon. The increase in the amount and severity of wildfires in southern Oregon, coupled with the pressurized pipeline, creates an increasing danger if the pipeline is approved and built. The benefit of jobs in the short term do not outweigh the negative impacts of the LNG pipeline. Instead, we need to focus on legislation that encourages new industry, such as clean energy jobs, which will provide much needed middle-class incomes, living wages, and union jobs that the LNG is promising without using eminent domain or creating unsafe conditions for our communities. They make a lot of promises, and I haven't seen any proof. None. is just the same old jobs, jobs, jobs. Don't worry. Jump up and down, scream jobs, and don't worry about the details. Okay, I digress.
Betsy,
I'm also a proponent
go
of
ahead.
Finance reform. Oregon is one of 6 states that has no restrictions on campaign donations, whether that be by individuals, the state parties, political action committees, or corporations. This must be addressed immediately. We must amend campaign finance to allow fair elections and ensure voters know their vote actually counts instead of fearing that large corporations buy local elections. My opponent has received $27,000 from political action committees, Jordan Cove, Oregon Hospitals, Pharmaceutical PACs, Oregon PERS, Public Employees Retirement Systems PAC. The list goes on. How can one create fair, unbiased legislation when the majority of their campaign finance comes from corporate PACs? Are we really so naive as to believe they don't want or will get anything in return? Your ability to be heard by your elected officials should not be determined by the depth of your pockets. There's one other thing I'd like to toss out there, Larry. Why are so many local officials just brain dead and think this is a great idea? Well, there's some other corporations besides Penumbra and the Canadians involved. We have done some very crude back of the envelope calculations on how much timber would come off that pipeline. And it's something north of 300 million board feet of timber. Right now, no appeal, no rights to say, wait a minute. And when they gain access, I mean, behind my house, there's 240 acres of BLM old growth that nobody has been able to get an easement into because none of the landowners will give them an easement. If that pipeline goes through there, they're going to log a lot more than just that right away. And the reason this has got so much local push is because the timber companies want that timber.
Interesting. Betsy, did we have any questions on the line?
No questions.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Richard, for joining us today. We hope that the residents of Douglas County will rise up and start demanding that the Secretary of State do their job and get the foreign money out of the campaigns.
Well, this Jordan Cove really crystallizes the issue. I mean, it makes it very clear. But
yes,
it's been there for a long time. And, you know, elections cost money. But if there was some sort of public financing or local contributions of a limited amount, but you know, people get their information from media, and money buys a lot of media. But I think that there's also a lot of people that are very concerned about Jordan Cove. And one of the things that's been really fascinating to me is that you have lesbian communes adjacent to Hope to Die Cowboys, and they're both deeply opposed to the pipeline. And there's a spectrum of people living out in the hills of Southern Oregon, and you know, as diverse a selection of political opinion you can imagine. But we all love this place, and this is a violation of what it is that's wonderful about Southern Oregon. And people spend a lot of money to come here because this sort of stuff is not here. And they're going to have a very tough time. And they've been spending a lot of money on politicians in Portland and a lot of money on politicians in Southern Oregon. And down here, all these Republican politicians, all they can do is talk about the horrible socialists, Democrats, and what a horrible person Kate Brown is. But when it comes to Jordan Cove, they're in bed together. A point we're mentioning.
Thank you for joining us today. It's been fascinating hearing about the situation in Douglas County.
Larry, there actually is a question from Brown Sly One. Does Richard see direct action against the pipeline as a possible solution if political options fail?
That's a very difficult question. What's direct action? Personally, speaking for myself, I don't like that sort of thing. We should be able to beat their butts in an election and make it stick. If the Trump administration does the razzle dazzle and slams this thing through, we'll have a chance to look at the draft EIS. If the previous EIS was any measurement, there will almost certainly be lawsuits over the gross inadequacy and huge assumptions that are made in this EIS. However, there's a lot of people opposed to this that don't come to meetings in Roseburg and Portland or Salem. They live out in the hills and they don't like the government. And if this thing just gets shoved through, they are going to have a heck of a time going out into the hills and digging this place up. Katie, you got something to say?
Yes, I'd like to say that this is not just in the hands of the federal government. FERC gets all its power under the Natural Gas Act, and the Natural Gas Act says, while FERC has all this power over pipelines and terminals, it is subject to the Coastal Zone Management Act. And the Coastal Zone Management Act is a list of all the values of estuaries and coastal zones in the United States. And so if the federal power is subject to the Coastal Zone Management Act, how that's administered to protect those zones is, well, it's actually sent to the states. California and Washington both said no LNG in our states because of the safety and other factors. In Oregon, because of land use planning, we don't make that decision at the state level. It's delegated down to the county level. And so the county commissioners of Coos County vote against this project. It is killed. It is dead, because that controls over all federal laws that FERC operates under. And that's why I'm encouraged in this situation that we have the power in Coos County, the voters of Coos County have the power to veto this project, and that will legally stick, and there's no question about the power of the Coos County commissioners to kill this project. We can't make it happen, but we can certainly make it not happen. And that's one of the reasons I'm running, in addition to all the other issues facing the voters and the people of Coos County.
Well, I'm hoping you're able to harness the energy of all the people in Oregon who have risen up and have opposed the LNG terminals statewide.
Gary, can I pile on to what Katie just said?
Sure.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Katie. And in Douglas County, there's 7 miles that is within the coastal zone management. And so that's the conditional use permit that the county commissioners or the county planning commission granted almost 10 years ago and has been extended repeatedly. And so, legal technicalities. Well, in Douglas County, that coastal zone is over Weaver Ridge, or as we call it out in Camas Valley, Wildcat Ridge. And it was created by an earthquake. and it's all kind of abstract, but we've took people out there and took them to the cliff and said, they're going to build a pipeline down this hill. And it's not abstract. How many times have they rebuilt Highway 42? Because in the wintertime, the mountains move around and they're going to build a pipeline through it. And the guys calling this shot are in Oklahoma. And then I've seen their timeline. Well, in March, we'll begin excavation. And then later in April, we'll be laying the pipeline. In the Coast Range, you boys are crazy. The weather is absolutely unpredictable. Absolutely unpredictable. You can get 4 inches of rain and then 10 days of sunlight. It is completely up to the sky. And when you start digging in that steep ground and you get rain on top of open soil, there's no telling where that'll end up. And we are, for our elected officials to be so dense to what it is, this place, the topography. And like you're talking about, Katie, you're talking about Jordan Cove and the estuary of Coos Bay. This is a moving thing. And to build a rigid pipeline and an LNG terminal through this territory, these people are either insane or criminally negligent. And the fact that the Trump administration in Washington, D.C., a jive artist from New York City is saying, go for it, is not encouraging. But I don't believe this will get built because I think the people will stop it. And I think that when all the legal other stuff is going on, there could easily be people in the hills that will block it. I will not be there. I don't believe in that. I don't like it. But there's people who do, and I'm not going to stop them.
So we have two calls to action. The first call is to contact the Secretary of State and request that they do their job and enforce the campaign finance laws. And secondly, all of those of you out there who are opposed to liquid natural gas terminals, please support Katie and get her elected, because that is the best way to stop this project.
I agree. Send her money. Send her love. Go over there and bang on doors. If Katie's elected, these guys have just got the 2x4 across the eyes.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Katie, for jumping in again. We're there with you. So going to our final topic, this is looking to the future and how we can affect things with our political structure. So we have in the works the reorganization of the Democratic Party of Oregon coming up. We have an event on November 11th, which will be a nominating convention for all of the progressives, Democrats in the state, to identify who will be running for the positions at the county level and the state level. If we have a card going out, this is the what we're showing here is the address side. So if you care about universal health care, if you want to see the national popular vote legislation passed, if you want to see the Democratic Party actually standing up and taking positions and working with our democratically elected officials in carrying out the platform of the Democratic Party of Oregon, please get involved and make sure that we elect people who will do this. On the next slide is the cover of the card coming out. The card will be sent to as many people as we have money to send it to. The event will be at the Sunnyside Community Center located at 3520 Southeast Yamhill. But if you cannot physically attend the event, we will be live streaming it, and we will be bringing in people from across the state to make statements on their candidacy. So go to advancementofdemocracy.org and get and register for the event and get more details. Going to the next slide. So there's 36 counties, and there should be 36 reorganizations coming up soon. Most of them occur between the November election and the end of February, because in March is when we elect the officials for the Democratic Party of Oregon. These are the county reorganizations where the counties elect their leadership for the next 2 years. As you can see, we only know about the dates for around a third of them, and they start right up after the election. So the counties that are having upcoming reorganizations should be having nomination committees formed, and we want to see our progressive Democrats running for all of these positions across the state. If you do not know when your reorganization is for your county, you are welcome to contact them and find out. They are legally required to notify the precinct committee persons within their county, but some of the counties have rely on email, and email doesn't always get delivered. So if you do not know when your reorganization is happening, contact your county and find out, because if you are an elected or appointed PCP, you have a right to participate. The first one is on November 12th for Harney County, and then we have a couple of big ones. We have Clackamas County and Marion County on November 15th. And remember, this is just the week after the election. So hopefully the people who have been thinking about running for these offices and are getting their names to the nomination committees. And then we have one of the big ones, Washington County, which will be on November 17th. That's going to be a big one because they've had so many precinct committee persons get elected in that county. It's going to be a huge day for them. And then we have my county, Clatsop County, who will be doing this on November 26th. Coos County is on November 27th. If you want to make sure that you get Coos County on the right side of the LNG terminal, please get involved with this organization. And then the next big one is Lane County, which is December 8th. We don't have a date yet for Multnomah County, which is electing the biggest number of delegates to the State Central Committee. They will have 20 delegates to elect, which is about 20% of the total. If you want to get involved, let's go to the next slide. Go to advancementofdemocracy.org and get on our mailing list, and we will keep you up to date on these activities as they happen. And this is also where you can get details on the nominating convention coming up on November 11th. Going to the slide on upcoming events. So, of course, the next big one in terms of elections is the ballots being mailed, and I believe they will be mailed out on around October 17th. The election day is November 6th. So your ballots have to be returned to the your county elections office by 8 p.m. on November 6th. Then again, on November 11th, we have the Progressive Nomination Convention. On November 12th, we have the first county organization kicking off the elections. The next meeting of the Democratic Party State Central Committee meeting is December 2nd, and that's going to be somewhere in the Portland area. We have some very, excuse me, critical items that are going to be brought before the Assembly. So make sure that your State Central Committee delegates attend. And then we have some activities going on into March, and then culminating with the March 16th and 17th reorganization of the Democratic Party of Oregon, which is where we will be electing a chair, 2 vice chairs, and the secretary. And then locally, you can check with your county on what positions that are that'll be run. That's our show for today. Next slide. Don't forget to donate to Uphill Media. There's a lot of expenses involved in running these programs and keeping our equipment up to functioning and keeping our staff happy. So any amount donated would be greatly appreciated. Anything you'd like to add, Betsy or John?
No, just that the reorg for Douglas County is the first Saturday in December. I didn't see it up on your chart. So
excellent.
That is excellent. There you go. No, great show. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for running. A lot of good information. Everybody out there in the chat, there's 20 of you watching now. I know there'll be more. There's links. There's lots of links with lots of information in the description to everything we talked about. Please click on them, and please share this. All right. I did pick a song. I always pick a song, Larry. You know that.
Hey, thank you very much. This has been great. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for coming on. So,
Great program.
Thanks. We always go out with music here on the Progressive Oregon Show, on all of our shows on Uphill Media. It just kind of helps us. And this one is interesting. I've never heard of this. It's just kind of looking for stuff. And this is Tom Paxton, Talking Vietnam Potluck, which is not the first thing that comes up when you Google Talking Vietnam, the song. You get a song by Phil Oakes, Talking Vietnam, which is actually a lot more serious and really sad. The thing that's important about both of these songs is that they talk about things that really haven't changed since Vietnam. And before that, things with our government and the way it conducts itself. It's really time we change all that, don't you think? That's why we have Katie running. That's why we have Richard doing what he's doing. That's why Larry and I are here, is so that we can stop this cycle that's been going on since before Vietnam. So let's listen to Tom Paxton's funny version. I'd click on the Phil Oakes version when you're when you're wanting to feel some rage. But this one's just going to make you feel, it's still sad, but it's an interesting song and a funny story. And I have no idea who this guy is. So anybody in chat, let me know if you've ever heard of Tom Paxton. Here we go.
This is a song about some astounding agricultural discoveries that the American troops have made in Vietnam. They have found a medicinal herb of proven restorative values there, growing in an abundance to boggle the Western mind altogether. Great waving forests and jungles of nothing but pot. Which comes as no surprise to the Vietnamese. You understand that. They've been merrily blowing grass for centuries over there. No big deal. But what happened in the modern era was the first GI got off the plane, was there 5 minutes, scored, and began a chain of events leading up to the present weird situation where we have on the one hand the Viet Cong stoned in the jungle. Caught in the middle, we had the villagers swacked in self-defense. And on the other hand, the GIs out of their gourds, up to and including the general staff, which explains a lot when you think of it. Well, when I heard this distressing story, naturally, I quickly had to write a song maintaining my traditional posture of neutrality. Now, when I landed in Vietnam, I hardly got to see Saigon. They shaped us up and called the roll, and off we went on a long patrol, swapping lies, swatting flies, firing the odd shot here and there. The captain called a halt that night, and we had chow by the pale moonlight, a lovely dinner they planned for us with a taste like a seat on a crosstown bus. Some of the veterans left theirs laying in the cans for the Viet Cong to find, deadlier than a landmine. Naturally, somebody told a joke, and a couple of the fellas began to smoke. I took a whiff as the cloud rolled by, and my nose went up like an infield fly. The captain, this blonde fella from Yale, he looked at me and said, "What's the matter with you, baby?" Well, I may be crazy, but I think not. I'd swear to God that I don't smell pot. But who'd hell have pot in Vietnam? He said, "What do you think you've been sitting on?" These funny little plants. Thousands of them. Good God Almighty. Pastures of plenty. So we all lit up, and by, the whole platoon was flying high. With a beautiful smile on the captain's face, he smelled like midnight on St. Mark's Place. Cleaning his weapon, chanting something about Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. The moment came, as it comes to all, when I had to answer nature's call. I was stumbling around in a beautiful haze when I met a little cat in black PJs, rifle, ammo belt, Dunlop sandals. Looked up at me and said, "What's the matter with you, baby?" He said, "We're camping down the pass and smelled you people blowing grass. And since by the smell you're smoking trash, I brought you a taste of a special stash. Straight from Uncle Ho's Victory Garden. We call it Hanoi Gold." So his squad and my squad settled down, passed some lovely stuff around. All too soon it was time to go. The captain got on the radio, said, "Hello, headquarters." "Hello, headquarters. We have met the enemy, and he has been smashed."